Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park. Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to go tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, ghouls, and welcome to Minute 12 of Do You Want to Party, the Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 groundbreaking horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and joining us today, a co-host of a former weekly podcast on the Planet Geek production feed called Geeking Off the Page, and a longtime friend and talented animator.
Hi, I'm Trevor.
Hi, Trevor. So I want to thank you for joining for this particular minute,
It's my
Mr.
pleasure.
Trevor. Yes, and we've been trying so hard to do this, and plans just never work out. And finally, opening, let's get this done right now. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So to begin with, how did you come about to discover The Return of the Living Dead for yourself?
When I was a young lad, I watched Night of the Living Dead. And I was living in Napanee at the time, and someone said, "Oh, you like zombie movies? Well, here's another zombie. I think it's a sequel." So I went in, and of course, they wouldn't let me rent it. I mean, I was like 11 at the time, maybe 12. And they're like, "No." So I convinced my brother, i.e., I paid him $5 to go in and rent it for me. Because I think I was 13 because he was 18 at the time. So he went in and rented it.
All right.
Just kind of like tossed me. He's like, "Here you go." And he said, "The only thing I could recommend is wait till mom and dad go to bed." I was like, "Okay." So I shanghaied the VCR up into my room, hooked the monitor that I was playing the Nintendo with, and watched the movie, fully expecting it to be a sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
It's not.
Nope.
But it was still a great movie to watch when you're 13.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yes. Yeah.
Movies.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's something that obviously keeps coming up throughout the
Zombies and
previous
movies.
episodes.
And I was
Yes,
just like,
exactly. Yeah.
"This is great." And then the next day, my brother's like, "You have to take the tape back to today, right?" And I was like, "So I got to watch it again." So yeah, I watched this movie a couple of times, and then later on, when I had a better relationship with the people at the video store,
Right.
they would just like ignore the fact that it was, not rated for a kid to watch and just let me rent it anyway.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, I like I've said before, I discovered it on the movie channel. I can't remember if it was First Choice or Super Channel at the time, or maybe it was the combination of the two. But yeah, I had just set a VCR because I just started enjoying modern day horror, and one day just got back to watching it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And again, Lana Quigley.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes
All right.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's definitely all it takes. Yes. Because it's also just like a lot of the people that I've talked to, it hit them. It entered their life at the appropriate age, like the young adolescent hormones and all that sort of thing. So not only the thrill of the zombies, but the thrill of the nudity, and which also is really nice that it's not exploitative either. It's not like gratuitous nudity. They do write into it a reason for her to be the way she is and all that, which works perfectly fine. And
yeah,
especially for those that don't mind watching a naked woman walk around for a good portion of her on-screen appearance.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go on to minute 12, which starts with a black car parking and ends with checking in from station 3. It's 1600. So picking up where minute 11 had ended, we have the black vehicle now parked just beyond the now closed gates.
The embassy.
And yeah, the embassy. At the end of the driveway, which is starting the bottom of the footpath that leads up to the front door.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this is obviously not the the area where you actually park, because if you look over to the very left side of the house, there is two already parked cars front to back. One that looks like a bit of a little sports car because it's got like a soft top convertible and all that sort of thing, and a little silver number in front of that. It's obviously someone of wealth is in
Or
charge
power.
of this particular, or power. That's a good point too as well. We do have the MPs who are now returned around and now facing forward as the gates start to close. And off to the right hand side, from obviously our point of view from this camera view, there's a tennis court, which is obviously a sign of wealth, especially in the 80s.
Yes.
It doesn't look to be anywhere to access this except for this little side road just in front of it, because there's like a little break in the hedges there that you can walk down the steps into.
Mhm.
And then again, it's like a villa sort of
Yeah.
look to it, which is
And the ocean
kind of
behind
nice.
it.
Exactly. So
Not a cheap place to stay.
no, definitely not a cheap place to stay, especially in the 80s in San Diego, sort of thing, where this is
Yeah.
apparently filmed. So we see a military man get out of the vehicle, and we then cut to the interior. Now, it's kind of cool because, sometimes you do exteriors, interiors, different places, but as you can tell by the door that the gentleman walks in through, everything matches from the outside and all that sort of thing. There's a little archway window above the door. There's the two giant windows that are flanking the door and all that sort of thing. This is obviously the entrance to this actual place. We have this fantastic red tiled floor, which goes along with the idea of this Mexican villa sort of feel to it. This whole entire foyer is so 80s. It's
Cinema 80s.
yeah, it's cinema 80s and all that sort of thing. A little later in the commentary, there's a little bit of information about why this place looks the way it does. But as we follow the gentleman, he walks over to this little table that has like a darkened statue. I mean, the lighting's not the greatest in this particular thing, so you can't make out a lot of detail. But on this covered table, there's a statue of a person, I believe, that he then puts his briefcase down on the table next to it, takes off his hat, and his hat, and then he starts sorting through obviously mail that's piled up on that sort of thing, and he then starts to head off to the next shot. Now, in the next shot, we are introduced to even a more gorgeous look of how gaudy the interior of this place is. Just beyond the if when the camera shoots from within the actual the dining room, we can see a better shot of the mural that's hanging on the wall just outside of it, or sorry, the tapestry that's hanging on the wall just outside this room. But as this gentleman walks in, who we don't give a name, we're not given a name of him yet, but we are aware that he is Colonel Glover as he enters the room. It's played by Jonathan Terry, which we'll go into him in a moment. And then he has a very sour look on his face. He is greeted brightly by his wife,
And cheerfully, she sets out some
very cheerfully
salads.
as she's setting up dinner and all that sort of thing. She he has this sour look on his face, and as she actually says talks to him and all that, she says a bright hello, dear. And as the colonel is walking behind her, his face, if you freeze it for like one particular second, he gives a tiny little smile with when her back is like completely to him, and then it's gone in a sec, like in an instant sort of thing.
Mhm.
Like he reacts to her
Saying
like
diva.
her brightness and all that sort of thing, but instantly snaps right back into the professionalism, and then is all like whatever. So she asks how his day was. He says the usual crap. and all that. Then we walk into probably the greatest turn of emotion.
Hold on. Don't miss the
What?
fact that she's like, I made your favorite
That's
lamb
what I was
chop.
getting to. That's what I was
Okay.
getting to
All right.
when he inquires what's because she goes from being this cheery, chipper housewife to when she tells him that she's made pork chops lamb chops
Lamb
for
chops
dinner, his favorite. He's all like, I had them for dinner. The
for
turn
lunch.
in her, I had them for lunch, yes. The look on Kathleen Cordell, who is playing the Colonel's wife, she has a sudden, like a switch just goes off. Her face just because she knows she's not looking at him. She knows that there's no way that he can read his face and all that.
Mhm.
And she just turns so sour when he just I had him for lunch, and then he basically
Yeah, all of her hard
decides,
work
yeah,
just wasted.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he basically drops the line, had him lunch, and just walks out.
Yeah.
Um, it's I don't know why what the occasion is, but if you look at the table, she's set up a bottle of champagne. Like
Mhm.
I don't know who has a bottle of champagne on a Thursday night.
It's the 80s. Everyone had champagne on ice.
Yeah, I guess if your household looks like that, I guess you're gonna have
Everyone
a,
has a bottle
on
of.
the regular. Yeah, exactly.
What are we celebrating? It's Thursday.
It's Thursday. There you go. She made lamb chops.
Yeah.
But yeah, she does not look happy at all. So we'll get back to Kathleen Cordell in a later minute. But as the camera just like slowly pans into her, we then cut to the Red Room, which is basically the only thing you can really describe this room as. The Red
The
Room.
red room.
It's yeah, I mean
Red drapes, red walls,
exactly, except for the brown wooden
pillars.
pillars holding up the
Well, did they
ceiling.
run out of red paint?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like the covering of the chairs along the bar on the one side are all red and all that. Yeah, and then
Someone got paid handsomely for the color red.
yeah, exactly, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so we're gonna design this, and I'm thinking red, and
There's
it looks
even
like
there's even like pictures on the wall that are all red except for like one like little metal
yeah,
boxes,
yeah,
and they're red
exactly.
too.
Yeah,
What the
it.
hell?
But if you look at it closely enough, the the wallpaper or paint, whatever it is, and the material on the drapes and the material on the furniture are so closely like related to each other, especially the drapes on the wall. The drapes on the wall, they practically are the exact same color and all that. It's fascinating to see this. So the colonel walks up to what looks like a liquor cabinet, and he stands in front of, and you hear the typical movie beep boop boop beep beep as he unlocks this particular thing. You don't actually he just it's weird how um
There's nowhere
he
for a
just
keypad to be,
yeah,
but somehow
exactly.
he
So
uses a
he just
keypad.
happens to turn in front of it, and you hear him click a couple of buttons, and then all of a sudden a light inside the one-way glass lights up, and we're privy to a old school green screen computer, as I'm sure us that are as old as we are have remembered those from back in the
Mhm.
day. Um, but so he opens up the actual both doors, so we now see what mid 80s computer uh expensive equipment looks like.
Mhm. Looks like a TSR 80,
Exactly.
good old trash 80.
Yeah, so the colonel then picks up a phone and then starts punching in a couple of buttons. And if you compare the sounds to the lock and the keypad on the phone, it's really, really similar.
It's the same.
Um, yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing, just a little louder on the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much the exact same sound effect. I mean, hey, on when you're working with a $4 million budget, you got to cut corners somewhere,
Oh,
right?
you cut a lot of corners.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So then that's when he basically is calling to check in. He announces that he is at home. He announces what stations he's at, and which is basically I'm checking in. I'm at home. I'll be here all night. It's from Station 3, and he gets to say the word, it's 1600,
So it
and
was 4 o'clock.
that's where our minute ends. Yes, because the end of the previous minute, we had the clock jump up on the screen saying that it's uh, Pacific
Mhm.
time and all that. So we know that we are removed from the situation in Louisville, which is taken in PST, which we are now on the opposite coast now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where that particular minute ends. So to bring it to over on the commentary track, now here's where you get a little bit more information about our situation. So again, the commentary track is with director and writer Dan O'Bannon and the production designer William Stout. So William Stout continues in his information from the previous minute about this being San Diego, so that the signs behind the MP guards, which he was talking about that he designed in the previous minute, he just didn't have the time to tell us what he was actually making. Um, he wanted to have them read the Spanish translation of the word Blue Thunder, which is a movie that Dan O'Bannon had written the script for and wasn't a really big fan of how the movie turned out compared to what he wrote and what they ended up using on the screen. As the shot changes to the interior of the house, Dan O'Bannon then mentions how he wanted to show the ocean like he had described in the script, which is where he wanted to do a panning shot from like the beach to the ocean, panning across, going up this cliff side of the to up to the top where this house is located at the edge of a cliff. Now, obviously, he couldn't do that. He mentions because they just didn't have the equipment to be able to do that. But then he quickly changes gears and mentions the house and its interior and how it was not dressed at all. Now, for those that don't know, dress or dressing a scene or setting is when the production usually brings in their own pieces and furniture or props to decorate or dress up a scene. So if you haven't established like a house or a already like a building that has stuff there, you bring in your own stuff to make it look like how you want it in the movie, how you want the final result to be in the movie. For this particular movie, they didn't do anything. This is how this place came up. So Dan O'Bannon continues with how the cartoonish or garish display is and how similar to the White House, he mentions that there are murals like this throughout the White House. Like in like we said, there's a painting on the back of the wall where the colonel and his wife are having this discussion about the lamb chops, and it's just this portrait of, it's kind of hard to describe. It's like a little like seaside little town and all that sort of thing. It's obviously some sort of Mexican or a Latin sort of influence in the back. There's like a little temple painted off in the background, and there seems to be peasants and all that, while like boats are going by this waterfront on the one side and all that. And like I said, it has a very Spanish feel to it. He then also mentions that the lady, which he doesn't call her by name, but he's referring to Kathleen Cordell, and how she looks exactly like Pat Nixon, and that they needed to cast her for that role. William Stout laughs at his in agreement of the likeness of the former First Lady. He then mentions that John Terry was a Boston stage actor, which is now we have John Terry doesn't have a lot of acting credits. He didn't do a lot of television, didn't do a lot of movies. He did a handful of everything. And if you were to do any sort of search, the two major places where you would go to would be IMDb, and where he has a credit of like 7 movies and all that sort of thing, one of which being this, and one of this being his return to the role in the sequel, Return of the Living Dead Part 2. But nothing really much else. 2015 was his last working acting credit, and that's about it. There is not much about him that I can find in my searching for. Everything keeps looping back to IMDb and Wikipedia, which keep telling me the exact same thing. They tell me what shows he's been in, and then where, like, that's it.
He was in Corvette Summer. He doesn't need a big.
Yeah, that's exactly. His earliest one is Corvette Summer, right? Exactly. Where he worked, obviously. Mark Hamill. Whether or not they had a scene together, I don't know. I can't not picture this gentleman in Corvette Summer. There is a picture on his IMDb of him in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and he's got this curly red hair that I don't think is a wig. So he obviously at one point did have hair, but there's not that much time between Season of the Witch and this, so I don't know. That might have actually been a really good wig.
Or he just broke out the razor.
Exactly. Which I highly doubt you'd want to, like, prior tuck yourself sort of thing, because he has it on the side. It was sort of more of a Jean-Luc, but this is well before Jean-Luc happened, so I just couldn't come up with someone else that would have been there. So
like a Telly Savalas.
Yeah. Like a Telly Savalas, yeah.
But with some hair left.
Yes. So once in the Red Room, Dan O'Bannon mentions that this is the actual color of the walls in the study.
Oh my God!
And the only dressing they did was the cabinet, which was a prop because of the computer.
Mm-hmm.
William Stout then mentions how it's very reminiscent of the early days of computers, and how primitive it looks now. Then that's what his quote was in this commentary, just to let you know that it's the year 2002 when this commentary was recorded. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, shortly after this, Dan O'Bannon passed away, like in 2009. So, but yeah, so when he says, how it looks primitive now, it's 2002 for him as now. So, yeah.
22 years later, he'd be like, oh my God, that's even worse.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. 40 years later, it's totally a different feel to it and all that. All right. So according to the script, so this is again, it's The Return of the Living Dead, the story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon. This is again the revised October 1983 version, which is based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. So where we left off previously, I'm just going to back up a little bit to tell you what the script did.
Okay.
So the expensive-looking sedan pulls up the driveway. The electric garage door opens, and the car pulls inside. So obviously,
couldn't do that because it didn't have a garage.
Bit of a difference. Yeah, there's no garage in this. But again, when you write a script, you don't know what locations you're going to get. So yes. And this movie, and like I've pointed out several times, this movie is full of that sort of thing. We wrote this is what we got, we can adjust. This movie has like a truckload of those sort of situations. So we cut to interior house on cliff overlooking the sea, afternoon. The driver of the car, a middle-aged man in uniform, an army colonel, comes into the house and greets his wife with a kiss on the cheek. Wife: hello, dear, how was your day? Colonel: the usual. Shit. Wife: I'm sorry. Colonel: what's for dinner? Wife: your favorite, lamb chops. Colonel: I had them for lunch. Throws his coat on the chair. The colonel walks out of the living room, and as he passes from room to room, we can see, through the windows, the cliff and the sea. Finally, he arrives at his study. Interior, colonel's study, afternoon. He crosses the padded floor with the liquor cabinet and opens it. Inside is an impressive array of electronics communication equipment. He slides his key card into the console, checks his watch, picks up a special telephone, and presses a button. Colonel: into phone. Yes, it's me. Checking in from station 3. It's 1800. And that's where we actually catch up with this particular money. So obviously in the script, the time is a little different. But the time in Louisville is the same as what the final movie is. So I don't think someone got their math proper. like advancing the clock and all that, or he just decided, oh, I'll do it a little later in the day. But again, the scenes coming up, we actually don't kind of match up very well. So one other thing I have noticed is that the cool thing about comparing the script to the final film is I was given privy to one of my former guest hosts pointed out the fact that there is a rough cut of the movie, which has a lot of the extra sequences that are not in the final film, but are in the script, which they actually did film. For an example, again, the sequence where Frank and Freddy, where Frank is showing Freddy the cadaver in the freezer. Okay. He in the movie he nudges him, tells him to get out, and all that sort of thing. Then we cut to them, and they're at the desk working on paperwork. In the script and in the final cut, when they come out of the room, we have Frank close the door and mention to Fred that he has to make sure that this door is closed very solid, or else it'll pop open on you. So they do. They slam the thing shut. It closes, and as they walk off camera, the door opens on itself. Now, in the original script, the toxin doesn't go through the piping system. It actually creeps up the stairs and coats the whole entire upper level, and then sneaks into the open door of the freezer, animating the corpse there. Obviously, we changed a couple of things, edit something out and whatnot. So yeah, so one of the examples we have in this particular minute in comparison to the actual working print. So while this is minute 12, so we're going from 11 to 12 in the movie, the actual working print is 12:18 to 13:24. So you can see how much more has actually changed between the two versions. So the colonel goes to the in this version, the colonel then, once he gets out of the car, actually goes to the back door, the back seat of the car to retrieve his suitcase. And then when the colonel enters the red room, there's a look through a sort of a porthole in the wall that we see him coming towards camera. And then the last second he turns, and that's where he walks, where it cuts in the final film, where he looks like he's just walking through a door into that. So apparently where it mentions he walks from room to room, this is obviously some sort of extra thing that they shot, which they then edit down. And that's how you turn a longer movie into a shorter movie, just by bits and pieces.
Little cuts, taking out things that don't advance the story.
Exactly. All right, so that really actually kind of brings us up to the end of this particular minute of any sort of information. But I would like to always ask newcomers to the show if they want to expand on their feelings of horror in general, because I've had several people saying, I don't like horror films, but I like zombie films. I'm not a big fan of horror, but I do like this sort of thing and all that. But what about you, Trevor? How did you come to the genre of horror?
Well, I mean, I basically dabbled in all the genres as a kid, and zombie movies always seem to just hit that special button of just like, wouldn't it be cool if, and then wouldn't it not be so cool if, and
that's right,
how would you fight them off, and all that other sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So this movie, as I said, I watched it at a very tender age, and it just broadened, to me, this movie broadened the topic of zombies much, much greater than it was. I think it paved the way for a lot of modern zombie films and shows that we've seen. But at the same time, funny enough, I mean, as a lot of people would describe this movie as very schlocky, very 80s. There is some very subtle editing for storytelling pacing that if they had let the movie be as big and bloated as the rough cut had been, people would have sat through it. But at times you would have lost the message that they were saying from scene to scene, because if a scene goes on and on and
Yeah.
on, whatever they were saying in that scene is lost. And I
Hmm.
noticed with this one, especially on the rewatch, there's some really nice tight cutting. They're getting in, they're saying what they need to say to get to the next scene, to provide the, what they need to say to get into the action, to so that they know people are then going to be settling back into their movie seats and grabbing their popcorn. Like this whole, like the opening credits, and then the initial ground, paving the ground to get that story on. They did it really smartly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I was in awe of just how good the editing is, especially now, in all honesty, compared it to some modern films that are just like, your eyes are bleeding. Like, why am I sitting in the theater for 4.5 hours for a story you could have told me in just over an hour and a half,
Yeah. Yeah.
start to finish? So I was impressed by the cutting and the editing of this film, especially in the early goes, when a lot of films, if they don't get those hooks in quick, people are going to kind of check out. And nowadays they pull out their phone and start looking at their phone or talking to their friend, but they keep it moving at a really nice pace. And I was pleasantly surprised.
Also, on that note that you just mentioned about taking out your phone and all that, this was also edited for an audience that didn't have the distractions. They didn't have the ability to, like, worst case scenario, you walk out of the theater and all that,
Yeah.
but you're there for the hour and a half, which this movie is one of those perfectly paced and perfectly executed hour and a half movies. You're in, you're out, you're entertained the whole entire way. There is not really much. I mean, there is a little bit of a slowdown, but it's at a time when you need to get your audience to relax for a moment.
Yeah.
And
Catch their
then
breath and
exactly,
hit them with the
exactly.
next jump, so that they, oh,
Yeah.
geez, why'd you do that
Yeah.
to?
See that, I mean, again, Dan O'Bannon, original writer of the Alien story, he uses a lot of the same things. Now, obviously, it's a Ridley Scott movie, so it's a lot longer, but again, the same thing. The
And they had a bigger
pacing
budget.
of, oh, a huge, yeah,
Yeah.
much huger budget, yes.
Yeah.
But again, it goes to show that it was written well enough to be able to, like, obviously there is a lot more that is taken out of the movie from what the final version that we got. And like you said, until this rewatch, like I've rewatched this movie so many times in the past like month or two that I've been working on this, that like it is a very satisfyingly edited movie. It's the pacing is it never lingers too long. And like you said, it cuts at the right moments. You don't linger too long. And again, seeing the extra bits and all that sort of thing. Oh, I could see why they cut that out. And like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, obviously that's missing because they changed the story slightly and all
Yeah.
that.
And even
But
just shave a second here, 2 seconds
yeah,
there,
yeah, exactly.
get to what they need to say for that particular scene to get to the next scene. So you come out of scene A, scene B, and to scene C, and don't waste a whole lot of time.
Exactly, exactly. Which, like you said, is not what you get nowadays.
No, now they're like, we're going to stay in scene A for a good 20 minutes, and you'll be asleep by the time scene B happens, but it'll happen so fast it'll be like a tenth of a second cut. We'll be right into scene C. So
Yeah,
hang on.
yeah. I mean, you do have movies that have come along in the modern day that are harken back to this type of way to do a movie. Now, obviously, not to the schlockiness and all that sort of thing, which I'd love. Actually, Totally Killer. Have you seen that one?
Not
Totally
yet. No.
Killer? No. Do yourself a favor. It has the feel of an 80s movie, but it's like it's one of my favorite tropes. Like it's time travel is involved
Okay.
with a killer sort of thing. So, but the main character goes back to the 80s and finds herself stuck in the middle of a slasher situation. And it has that great feel. But again, it's only like an hour and a half long. It introduces your main characters and how they feel about the modern day. And then when this girl gets shot back into the past, you see how she quickly adapts. She knows what's going on because she knows the story of what happened back then and all that. And then it's really well done. And do yourself a favor. I believe it's on either Amazon or Netflix. One of those two have
I'll
it and
check
all
it out
that.
after this.
Yeah, and it's got a great pacing and it's a great cast because it's like this movie at the time, except for your older actors in this.
Mhm.
Everyone is pretty new to it or very like fresh face because
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so
So fun fact, when I rewatched this movie, I was thinking to myself, it'd be interesting if they remade this movie, but they could not remake it with modern directors. This movie remade with modern directors would be an absolute shit show. Because I was running through my head like all the different like directors who, and I was just like, no, 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 no. They'd either bloat this movie out to 3 hours, or they'd turn it like they just like, well, let's tell the story from this dog's point of view. No, the script's fine.
yeah, okay.
And the thing is, a lot of people be like, well, we'll modernize and give people cell phones. A lot of horror movies of the 80s, you give people cell phones, the movie doesn't happen. It really
True.
can't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
Because they're like, no, there can't be zombies. Look, here on my phone. Oh, okay, yeah. We'll call it the National Guard right now. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Movies like this, even just holding up your phone and showing video you shot in the 80s is like, look at this giant camcorder I put on my shoulder. Here, let me pop out the tape. Where's the VCR? Let's go over here to the Blockbuster. Watch what? And they're like, we're already dead. We've already been killed and eaten.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, yeah, because it was like one of the characters in Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. One of the characters uses like wears glasses, has them broken, so he uses his camcorder, so he focuses with that and all that. So he's like, oh, there's a convenience sort of thing. But again, yeah, the modern day horror film, a lot of the really well done ones are not of the modern day. They go back to a time prior to cell phones, which is again, cell phones destroys anything like anything that is modern day. If you don't have a cell phone helping you finish off what you're doing, then yeah, you're first of all failing. It's like Superman forgetting he could fly.
Yeah. Like, wait, I can fly. I don't have to stand in this line at the TSA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right, we got.
Oh, yep. So yeah. Go on.
Cell phones. It's unless the cell phone is an integral part of the story. Modern horror films really like the cell phone kind of kills it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're like, oh, let me look up a YouTube of how to escape a psycho chasing me with a machete.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Let me call an Uber to drive me away.
I mean, a situation like a Freddy Krueger can still happen. Because it's not in the physical, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, again, you can still have your Jasons and Michaels and all that sort of thing, but it's easier with a cell phone for you to get help for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, your Jasons, you're stuck in a forest somewhere, so less of a chance and all that. What? I don't have any cell phone reception. All that.
But you still have a light, so you cannot I'm completely blind in the forest.
Exactly.
All right, let's follow the path.
Yeah, but Michael Myers stalking you through your hometown and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, little less. Yeah.
Yeah, but enough people like live streaming. Here he is over here by the playground. Get him, guys.
Yeah. Well, that really didn't quite work out though for those remakes.
Well, I mean, when you say get him, guys, you're not saying, hey, fuck ups. Now let's get them. Let's trip all over each other.
That's true. Yeah.
No, that's when you're like, hey, let's get the entire town. We'll surround the guy, wrap him in people will wrap him in chains, take his weapon away, and then it's really hard to come back from the dead when you're in 1,800 pieces.
True. But he did happen to do that in Jason Goes to Hell, though.
I know that's it's cool.
Well, that was kind of a fun movie. I mean,
but they didn't have cell phones, so
no, they didn't have cell phones. Yes, they definitely did not have cell phones. Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this particular episode. Trevor, I want to thank you very much again for joining me.
Anytime.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. Hopefully, I'll be able to get you in for a future minute or at least a couple of minutes because I know there's a couple of sequences that you'd probably want to talk about and all that. I'd love to if I ever find well, I mean, there's a lot of fantastic editing, but when we get to like the frantic sequences where there's like 3 or 4 locations going on, if we have a good sequence where we're jumping between those, I definitely want to pull you back for that, because again,
That was great.
like we mentioned, the editing is so on point for this particular movie. Again, also the fact that it's not a digital movie.
Yeah.
They were editing celluloid and all that for
Mhm.
this movie, which is again something modern day
I've done it. It
filmmakers don't
sucks.
have to deal with it. Oh no, I've had to do it too.
Oh,
It's
it really
like,
sucks.
yeah, no, it's terrible, especially if you don't do it properly or you miss that one frame and it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, oh, but yeah, something modern day filmmakers don't have to worry about because
No,
everything's
no, they
on
don't.
digital. I mean, digital has its purposes, but there's something about seeing something with a grain that just pops.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to thank everyone for listening to this particular episode. Just a reminder that go check out the Godfathers of the Movies by Minute podcast setup. That's the Star Wars Minute guys. Um, Alex Robinson and Pete the Retailer, who many, many, many moons ago started doing this, where they broke down minute by minute the original Star Wars: A New Hope. And now that they've gone through all the movie series and all the TV series, and well, they have Skeleton Crew coming up right now. But if you're interested in any sort of movie, do yourself a favor and go to moviesbyminute.com. And there's a list of over 300 movies that have this particular sort of setup to them. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find a movie to your liking. If not, do yourself a favor and join the community and start building your own, because the community is very welcoming and very supportive. And I have a handful of future guests, hosts that are actually part of the community that just I put out a call for, hey, anyone want to help? And several hands went up. So I'll be bringing in those people in the near future and all that. So once again, Trevor, thank you for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm glad we can finally eventually get this done. And so until next week. See you next Wednesday.
Bye.
You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.